happy to introduce today a gentleman who's built a startup, one of the most coolest startups, I would say. Welcome on board, Suhas Misra, co-founder, Paperboatdrinks, and director, Hector Beverages Pvt Ltd. Suhas, welcome on board.
Thank you.
It is an honor to have you.
Thank you.
So, quenching thirst through rekindling memories, and building one of the coolest consumer brands. How it has been an experience, a journey for you as one of its co-founder and the chief brand strategist?
Well, yeah, it has been a very interesting journey. When I saw what you'd written here and what you just mentioned, quenching thirst, rekindling memories, I thought that's a very interesting way of putting it. So Neeraj and I, for me, largely the story of Hector is the story of my friendship and that relationship with Neeraj. And we met each other during our Coke days. He was my second boss. Learned a lot from him in that phase, and we became friends, had enough common interests, and much later it was more about let's do something together before we started the company, then about what we do together. And he was still at Wharton finishing his second MBA. I was thinking of exiting my first venture, Channel Play, and we started talking about what should we do, and we thought of lots of businesses, and then realized that a lot of this thinking is quite opportunistic and we should do that thing which we were really good at. And so sometimes I find that it's quite fascinating how if you're working in something, your entire worldview is shaped by it. So for example, I'm very aware even today, and Neeraj is an absolute nerd on this front. We are very aware of what this stranger who just crossed us, what this person was drinking, and or what was available in this campus, or so on and so forth. Like you go in and you have a very beverage view of the world. So I think the larger narrative, as much about the memories part, for me, is about saying for whatever reason, for whatever random reason, you have a love of beverage, and let's try to build a business around it. So
and you guys did it.
And we did. And I mean, one of the things that one of our early investors, Arjun from Catamaran, used to say, the line he really liked was when we were talking to them about investing in Hector, and he said, what do you really want to do fundamentally? And Neeraj said, we want to build a brilliant beverage. And we had this very long conversation about what exactly is a brilliant beverage. And Arjun keeps saying still that it seemed a very strange adjective for a beverage. Like, what's a brilliant beverage? And then obviously the answer to it is more iterative and it's not so straightforward. But I really like it for, like when I think of the whole time at Hector, it is basically saying you are some sort of beverage nerds. Like usually you think of nerds and you think of tech, but there can be nerdism in whatever. And we sort of shared it, Neeraj and I, a beverage
similar
nerd
passion.
view. Yes,
It's more of passion for a particular.
Correct. And you're not taking enough time to saying why this? Why are you passionate about this?
So the decision making was very swift.
Yes.
In your case. You mentioned during the day earlier in your talk at our university, you mentioned that there are pros and cons of developing a business with friends.
Yes.
Share a little bit more about that statement.
I think one of the things that is quite big is in the early phase of a startup, nothing beats that experience, because it's almost like you've now all grown up, but you're still sort of doing that thing which you really enjoyed in college, which is, hanging out with friends for sometimes hours and hours. There is no real sleeping time, there's no real working time. It's all one big blur, which is probably true of all our college life, everybody's.
Absolutely.
And so although Neeraj and I didn't study together, but what was fascinating for me in the early days was that we were spending entire days either talking about this or, doing things about it. And that's very exciting. And the complication is that friendship is by default. I mean, usually there are power roles within friendships also, if you think about it. But by and large, friendship is a hierarchically flat structure. Your friends, you're both at par. Fundamental conflict, one of my profs at IMCAL used to say, and she mentioned later because channel play was even more so because three of us were
That was your
batchmates.
earlier first
Yes.
startup.
And it continues to do very well, but it continues to do well because one person took it over. Sandeep, he's the one running it. It's India's biggest retail marketing company. But this prof of mine used to say that the problem is that the idea of the friendship startup is that it's all going to be love and peace and so on and so forth. But organizations demand hierarchy. And I think that is a fundamental conflict.
That's correct. Picking up from there, organizations demand hierarchy. You also mentioned that while you do business with friends, some stage you also develop somewhere you develop hate.
Yeah, there are elements of it, and I always cringe when I think of that because my relationship with the channel play, my friend Sandeep who runs channel play, and my relationship with Neeraj, they are amazingly complex relationships. I mean, it's like I've been close friends with, I've counted, I can count 8 very close friends in life, but these 2 relationships are so complex because I can't, I mean, I'm still very close to them. It's I don't know if you've seen this MASH, the TV series.
Right.
And there they talk of that when you share something like war as an experience, you don't just become close, you cling to each other.
Right.
I'm not saying entrepreneurship is like war. I'm
Right.
sure war is
Way beyond
other
level.
But I think the kind of stress it puts an interpersonal relationship, the kind of stress it puts on that relationship, what results is something very different. And it's still friendship, but it's friendship of a very different type.
Right, and it's perpetual. You have to work
Yes.
again tomorrow morning.
Correct. And
You
even now, so for me it's quite interesting. Post facto, when I still meet these people, and I mean, I'm great friends with them, but it's still, it's added another dimension to it. You sort of know the other person that much better. Because if you think about it, we never really know how our friends are at work. Because usually we share a friend coming back and sharing a story that, oh, at work this happened. And we are sort of their sounding board or, helping them rant or vent it out. But in this case, this is the first time when you say, okay, this person I know personally and this person I know professionally. I think it's just the quantum of information in that relationship is just something else.
Something else, and you can ride on to certain things.
Yes.
So this question, next one, is from a student's perspective.
Yeah.
The opportunity for a student to get educated in a IIM. You are alumnus of IIM Calcutta.
Yeah.
And now, how much it has helped you build your career while you were in Coke, and you then worked with Nokia, and then you set up your first startup, Channel Play.
Yeah.
And then how much it has helped you build one of the most successful, I would say, consumer brands. How much the management study you did helped you, and why not a student from a normal management school, build and sort of an initiative like this?
So I think there's no real reason why they can't. I think I've often thought about what exactly did IIM do to me. So I'll just give you a longer version of the story.
Sure.
So I was quite distraught when I didn't get into IIT after my class 12th.
And you did your engineering from
I did my
Bhilai?
engineering from Bhilai. I was quite like, where am I? I shouldn't be here. Because there is this whole culture. I grew up in Lucknow. I mean, as a place and within the extended family, you have these examples and you have to be like this cousin and that cousin. And there is that pressure on you, even though my parents never put that pressure, but there is that.
There is a pressure.
And you are very harsh on yourself about that failure.
Right.
And it's, which in hindsight doesn't really matter. I mean, I can empirically say it doesn't matter, but the point is it sticks with you somewhere in you. So for me, point number 1 of the answer would be that IIM Calcutta gave me a lot of self-confidence, which, to be fair, I shouldn't have lost in the first place.
Okay.
I mean, I shouldn't have been that harsh about not cracking a particular exam
to go into IIT. Yeah.
So on the confidence bit, it definitely helped. In terms of actual value addition, I think what it did was, at least back in the day, I mean, the biggest value addition was that put a lot of very smart people.
So you build
in
a very
campus.
good, nice peer network.
Yeah, and the quality
good
of
group.
conversation, etc., was quite interesting. Like most people, I wouldn't attribute a lot to a particular course. I mean, there are 3 or 4 courses which I thought were very interesting, which made me think. But they were all unconventional courses, like economics of development or organization behavior. So unlikely courses. If one says hard skills, did I learn how to look at a profit and loss statement? Maybe I did a little bit, but the kind of understanding I got when I started working it happened on its own. It's not like some hard skills I picked up
or some set skills you picked up.
Correct. So, I wouldn't attribute a lot to that. Things I thought about expanded. So like I said, some of the economics courses, which is very strange because economics is not seen as a core.
And entrepreneurship also is not something which you can learn.
That's true.
Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think entrepreneurship can be learned. I think it's so much about going in, doing it, and
having a pragmatic approach in
Correct.
in a perpetual manner.
Correct. I think the one place where there is a sort of unfair advantage is that when we started Channel Play, it was a B2B business, and because of the IMCAL label, the stamp as it were, there are more offices you can just walk into.
Okay.
Or you can say, hello, I am Suhas from the 38th batch, you who are from the 20th batch and leading this company.
So it does help.
In the networks, it definitely helps. But that said, we needed a lot of that help because the business plan wasn't as clear. So I mean, if I have to think of a student who, for whatever reasons, does not have access to the same networks, but has a pretty solid business plan, then like the startup you were talking of, School Bag.
Right.
I mean, they're building something where the product will speak. At Channel Play in the early, we were trying to pitch a service, and so if you ask me, did it help a lot at Hector? Maybe less so, because we were trying to build a product, and if you build a brilliant product, you are more likely to succeed. So I think a great idea and some enough hard work put on a great idea, I think that sort of does level out.
Okay.
Yeah, but if the business plan requires you to walk into and get companies to give you contracts, then I think the advantage is quite unfair.
Okay.
For any of the the older IIMs, say Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta, Lucknow, because those networks have reached
a certain pinnacle.
CEO level and big companies. If you want those contracts, but that is a small segment also.
So you feel that the opportunity was great for you overall?
Yeah. I think on the self-confidence more than anything else.
Self-confidence. So let's talk about building a niche product.
Right.
How to scale up? Were there challenges? You've exited out of the company.
Correct.
What are your outside thoughts?
My thought is, so there are 2 parts to it, right? I mean, the first part is it's important to separate being proof of concept and being niche. So being proof of concept is a deliberate attempt to do things at small scale and learn, sort of what is called the minimum viable product approach.
MVP,
yeah.
right.
So that's different, and being niche is different. So if a business has taken the call that I'm happy to be niche, I'm happy to play this space where I see 100 crore brand happening, but do not necessarily see 1,000 crore brand happening, I do not necessarily think that's a bad idea, because 100 crore is a perfectly respectable revenue.
Yeah, it is.
So the point I'm trying to make is, it's difficult to say when you're niche or not. So if you end up talking to say someone at one of the big FMCG companies and you say, I've built a 100 crore brand, they might say that's niche. But if you think about it in terms of what existed before and going from 0 to 100, I wouldn't call it niche. I would say 100 crores. I mean, to be honest, it's not even about lack of ambition. It's like, can you build a profit story around it? So for me, I mean, when I think of this business or any business, the point is, are you creating that bottom line? Do you see a path to a good bottom line? And I wouldn't call any brand which is running into 100, or I wouldn't call it niche, but so yes, I think coming out of that niche is a very difficult thing, and I would say that more often than not, you probably do it riding some macro factors.
Okay.
So the country itself is consuming more and more. You've built 100 crore brand today. The country has enough of growth and enough of expansion
And
happening
also
in
opportunities. It's
consumer
a big
base.
country and a
Yes.
big consumer base. So was there somewhere in your mind, you and Neeraj and James even,
Yeah.
you know, a predefined market when you launched this product? Or a segment?
So different segments. So what we were very aware of that we should be very clear about what the segment is, both in terms of its demographics and its psychographics.
So you spend time in understanding the
Yes.
projectable
Yeah.
consumer behavior for
Correct.
launching a consumer brand.
Yes, we did. So we, in the absolutely early phase, when we were saying, so the most exciting segment obviously was young adults, where you say first jobbers, people in colleges. And so Neeraj and I, and when James would come in, but Neeraj and I spent a lot of time just going to various colleges, like going and sitting at, say, Delhi University canteens and just having a lunch there over 2 hours, just to see around us on which table what is getting consumed and why, and generally sometimes having conversations with people that why are you having this lemon drink, and before we had anything, just being curious.
So you guys also had a phase where you gave freebies and all?
Oh yes. We gave away. I would like to think it was all quite smart, and the most of it was during the Zynga years, and a lot of it was, I thought, quite smart. Like things like, we realized IIT Delhi is our biggest account, and once we figured their midterms are on, so we got Zynga delivered to every room saying it's the last night before their exam, so make it count.
Right.
Because the point was stay awake.
Stay awake, yeah.
So I would like to think we did it in a reasonably smart manner, but yes, we did.
So out of Zynga, your Amras,
the paperboard armrest.
the paperboard Amras, which one you would definitely go with?
I have a soft spot for Zynga because that was the years of our struggle.
And though Amras is very popular.
Amrest is very popular. The other reason, I'm also a bit of a caffeine addict. As you might have noticed with you today, I've been.
let's have caffeine.
Yeah. On that note.
Okay, so Zynga.
Yeah, I would, but more for emotional reasons. These days I'm trying to not have as much of, but yeah. Among the paperboard ones, I really like Ampana. That has the most emotional cachet for me because it was a drink from where I grew up. In fact, it was my mother's recipe which we tried to crack while making the product. So Ampana is big in my part of the world. You would come home when you're in school playing cricket in the summer, and when you come home, someone would say, have some Ampana, nahi to loo lag jayegi. So that was like the default advice. So Ampana is quite close as a category to, I anyway like it. I mean, in paperboard and even at home.
So how difficult was it, Suhas, to work on the branding strategy? You mentioned while we were driving that TV played a big role.
Yeah, so I think
to reach out to the audience, to build the brand, bring awareness.
Yeah, I think
as compared to social media.
Yeah. So I think for me, the answer to that big question is, and it's a very big question. If you're a startup and TV, given the entry sort of budget you would need, is a leap of faith, and mostly it will be a leap of faith. Models won't tell you what will happen is that. So the big problem with TV is one, that you do need it to get to any kind of scale. I mean, I think it's while all of social media is great, and different brands can do very cool stuff, and I love all of that, but I think it's a width and depth thing. So you can generate a lot of depth. You can tell a very complex story on social media because you're not really as hard pressed for time as on TV. But on TV, you are back to the old game and saying 30 seconds. What do you have to say? So TV is very important. The big question for the entrepreneur, and one that Neeraj and James and Niradyani and I grappled over for many hours, was, are we ready for TV now? And we had that debate over many months. And even when we took the call, it was still a judgment call. I cannot say that we
was it a calculated judgment?
Somewhat. I mean, we would talk to people and say, okay, this brand got from 20 crores to 60 crores spending this money on, and we would try to say this consumer is more or less similar, but he was just approximating. Like, the problem is it's not an exact science.
Yeah.
And it's a leap of faith.
So you're taking a chance with your judgment.
You're taking a chance.
Now, does your investors look at you? So you raised money from Catamaran, Sequoia,
had come in,
and then Hillhawks.
Hillhouse was later.
Hillhouse was later. And now
so this is the period Catamaran, then Sequoia period.
And so you left when Sequoia.
Yeah.
So how does your investors see when you spent, on branding and marketing and TV and different channels of?
I think they were quite interesting. So what I, in hindsight, think in terms of our investors. So we had two relatively. Footprint was a relatively small fund, and we had Catamaran. Mr.
Murthy's fund,
and Sequoia. Those are three I have experience with, and I think the good thing was that a fund like Catamaran and Footprint, so Josh and Arjun, these guys, with them there was great. There were a lot of good open-ended discussions.
Okay.
So we could philosophize a lot.
Yeah, comfort feel.
Yes, and Sequoia, because of its great experience, they were able to bring in a lot of rigor.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I rate all three for different reasons. I rate all three quite highly.
So you've been very lucky to work with
I think so. I've heard some bad stories about investors but I would rate all three quite highly. The kind of rigor that Sequoia brought, I think it added a lot of value to the business, which one would expect given that it is Sequoia. Almost by definition, but people are sometimes wary of what an investor, what role do they play. But I see like some of the conversations with Catamaran and Footprint, they were more open-ended, but they helped you discover more things and probably.
So they walk the path.
Yes.
And yet with a goal in mind.
Yeah. I think all three were very constructive.
In a way, it was a constructive teamwork.
I think without them, we wouldn't have had the courage
Yeah.
to go on TV, to be honest, or to take any big bets.
Yeah.
I think that was very important.
Yeah, you need
because
somebody to.
They said you can do this, go for it, and broadly.
That's
obviously
big,
there was
broad encouragement.
There was an analytical framework, but you needed that broad consensus because it's too big a decision to say, let's do.
I'm going to spend 4 crores or 3 crores on TV. Now, coming back to the present moment, you had a sabbatical after exiting out of Hector, and let's talk about what's new. What is your present venture? And I believe it's a very different sector.
Yeah.
Is it something close to your heart? What's his name? Where it is now? Tell us about it.
So I, like you mentioned, I took good time off. I like to say I walked the earth, but not as much as I would have liked to. But I spent a lot of time in a lot of places and read and traveled and just did a lot of random things and thought about what I want to do next. That was one big thing for me, and I briefly thought, should I do an MPhil, which is very different from anything that I've done in the past. I wanted to study evolutionary anthropology. Fortunately or unfortunately, I didn't get admission into this course at Cambridge. So I might have been doing that otherwise. And then here and there, I'd made a few angel investments, nothing significant, and then one of these was in this telemedicine space, and I started thinking about healthcare, and I started thinking about the fundamental healthcare problem in India, and it is what I see as a wicked problem. So it is an intellectually more challenging question, and I thought, if I really want to do something which is challenging and intellectually engaging, then I thought, can I think through this problem and get technology in, which has the great big descriptor of our times, and get it to incrementally solve and resolve this.
What are you exactly trying to solve?
So the fundamental problem, it cannot be articulated in one way, but the the reasons
in India's perspective, perspective,
is one that out-of-pocket expense on healthcare is debilitating for most people.
It is.
Single biggest cause of bankruptcy as I see it. Typical cost of hospitalization is half of typical asset holding, liquid assets in a household. It's quite dangerous, and it's one of those things that the state should have done for its people, honestly. But the state's not going to do it. It's not a political question. It is that the state in India has decided it's not part of the contract I have with my public. What is the nature of the Indian public? Big debate. Let's not go. But the point is, the state is not going to do it. As I see it, you have 2 or 3 options. One option is you try and go deliver it in one village, which is the worst off, or one district, which is the worst off, which is more or less the activist NGO route. Second option is you start lobbying the state, become political yourself, start protesting. Where is my healthcare? Where, speak for India citizens.
Right.
Which is the politician solution. So I'm neither an activist nor a politician. I like being an entrepreneur. So what I see my role in the healthcare game is, can I understand this problem and can I attempt to solve it at scale? Which can only happen if my solution is scalable, which means it has certain unit economics which can be replicated over and over.
Over to different states or different parts, different regions, different geographies.
Countries, whatever.
Right.
So that is what I'm working on. So I see 2 parts of the business. One is I look at the doctor-patient relationship, see what role technology can play there in terms of. So a very interesting data point is that India has around 50,000 doctors coming out every year, and only I think 10,000 post-graduation seats. But almost no doctor wants to straight up go and start practicing. Now there are lots of social, cultural reasons for it, all of which I'm not saying I can change. But this basic connectivity of this doctor to this patient over technology itself is a big part of the solution. Now comes the question of how good is this interaction? So can technology play a role in assisting this doctor?
Okay. To find what?
To basically be a better doctor.
To be a better doctor
can be. So let's say a doctor.
So like the culture of family doctors, like we would pick up a call or call our old uncle who used to cure us.
That's very interesting. You bring a family doctor. So I see the broad, simplistic way of putting it as doctor plus my tech is equal to family doctor.
Right.
So the doctor's face might change, but the tech should be so
steady
that whichever doctor is now seeing whichever patient has as much information as the family doctor had about us when we were growing up.
Right.
And similarly, now can technology play a role using big data and stuff on the side of helping the patient take a decision? How does the patient navigate a very complex system which has so many players, so many private players, public options, typical complications? So how can I help this patient navigate a super specialty government hospital?
You are focused more on the rural side?
Yes, rural, peri-urban, that's my big interest right now.
And do you think collateral businesses would come together around this, insurance and all, or no?
Ethical line I would like to draw is that, one, obviously no data which is not anonymized can ever go to anyone really from this company. Second, is it leading to whatever collateral business or partner businesses that want to join this network? Is it quantifiably leading to lower cost, better
medical
quality
healthcare,
outcomes?
Better quality. That's the goal. That's your goal. It's more of
that is sort of the Oxfam razor.
So you are venturing more into a business which will create impact at the rural level to improve the health condition.
Yes.
And also something which can be managed easily according to your pockets.
Correct.
Is that your final goal?
That is my goal, and what this whole impact space is, as you know, I mean, it's still emerging.
Right.
But I think there is potential to do a business right, and I still want to make money.
Yeah.
I want my company to make money. I wanted share price to go up. So I think there is a case for. I would really like to answer that question after having done this. That what exactly is social entrepreneurship? Because I don't think the current answers hold. I mean, the current definitions, there are some technical definitions, and that's fine. But answering it, I still see that I have to be accountable to my shareholder.
Right.
That has not changed between Hector Beverages or Tardigrade Health.
Tardigrade. So with that note, we wish you very best.
Thank you.
That you are venturing into building a business for impact, where money shall follow eventually. You can't do stuff and scale without money. But it's been a pleasure having you on board on Just CANDID.
Yes.
And thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you again.
Great work at Chitkara. I'm thrilled to have seen all of it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I had a great day at Chitkara University first, and now at this incubation place. It's it's much more exciting, honestly, than I thought it would be, because I've seen a few of these, and the very specific nature of this incubator, and also the interaction I had earlier with the students. I loved some of those questions. I think some great stuff is happening at Chitkara, and I really wish all the very best to all people involved who are driving it, Sumir who's doing it, and everyone else. Great work, guys, and I hope you continue it, and I'll be happy to help in whatever way I can.